Nobody told me humans were insane. Not clinically, legally, or medically insane, mind you, just functionally detached from any reasonable survival instinct the rest of the galaxy holds dear. My name is Vorath Kell, and I served as tactical observer for the Terminus Alliance during what the humans now call the Scourge Wars. 17 species, 400 colony worlds, and one collective nightmare named the Krell that wanted to consume everything in its path. We were losing. Badly. The kind of badly where admirals stop making eye contact and start scheduling meetings about acceptable casualty projections and strategic retreat parameters. Then Command assigned me to shadow Sergeant Mara Flynn. I should mention something first. The Krell don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They are a hive consciousness spread across millions of biological weapons that exist solely to tear apart anything with a heartbeat and absorb the genetic material. Imagine if your worst nightmare could learn from every mistake it made while killing you. Now multiply that nightmare by several million and give it starships. That was my Tuesday. Mara Flynn was, well, she was something else entirely. Average height for a human, which made her short by most species standards. Red hair pulled back in what humans call a ponytail, which seemed like a tactical liability. Honestly, freckles across her nose looked like she should be teaching children or baking bread, not standing on the edge of extinction with a rifle that weighed nearly as much as she did. The rifle. Right. We need to talk about the rifle. "Morning, sweetheart," Mara said to her weapon on my first day observing her unit. I blinked all three of my eyes in sequence, a Vorian expression of confusion. "Sergeant Flynn, are you addressing me?" "What? No. She patted the rifle slung across her chest. "Talking to Betsy here. We've got a big day ahead, don't we, girl?" "Yes, we do." I checked my translation implant 3 times. It was working perfectly. She was definitely talking to an inanimate object, in baby talk. Her spotter, a human named James Park, didn't even look up from checking his equipment. "Don't mind Mara. She does this every morning. Has full conversations with that thing. The weapon does not possess consciousness," I stated, because apparently this needed clarification. "Oh, Betsy's got personality," Mara said cheerfully, running a cleaning cloth along the barrel with disturbing tenderness. "She's temperamental, likes to be appreciated, and absolutely hates humidity. Don't you, gorgeous?" The rifle did not respond, because it was a rifle. "Your psychological evaluation cleared you for combat duty?" I asked, genuine concern creeping into my translator's output. James laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "Observer Kell, Mara's got 43 confirmed kills on Krell commanders. 43. You know how hard it is to even identify a Krell commander in the field, let alone get a clean shot before they disappear into their swarm? She's the best shooter in the entire human expeditionary force." "And I couldn't do it without Betsy's help," Mara added, giving the rifle a final pat before standing. "She tells me things." This was a joke. Surely this was a joke. Humans had peculiar humor. "What things does your rifle tell you?" I asked carefully. Mara's expression shifted. The playfulness evaporated like water in vacuum. Her eyes, which had been warm and slightly manic, went cold and focused. Wind speed, humidity. The exact moment when everything aligns. When Betsy's ready, I shoot, haven't missed yet. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "We deploy in 20 minutes, James said, breaking the sudden tension. "Command's identified a Krell staging ground approximately 8 kilometers from here. They're massing for another push on the civilian evacuation routes. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen. I'd read the briefing. The Krell were building up for a major assault. Intelligence suggested at least 4 command nodes would be present, directing thousands of warrior forms. Standard protocol was to call in orbital strikes and pray the Krell didn't adapt fast enough to counter them. The survival rate for ground teams getting within observation range was approximately 7%. Humans, I was learning, did not care much for statistics. The insertion was relatively quiet, which should have been my first warning. In war, quiet means something is waiting. The transport dropped us 6 kilometers out, and we hoofed it through terrain that looked like someone had taken a beautiful forest moon and then let a meat grinder have a philosophical conversation with it. Trees were shredded. The ground was churned into a paste that smelled like rotting copper, and worse things I couldn't identify. Krell had been here recently. Mara moved through the devastation like she was on a casual hike. The rifle, Betsy, stayed in her hands at all times, barrel pointed down but ready. She'd hum occasionally, little human songs I didn't recognize. James stayed 3 steps behind and to her left, scanning with his targeting scope and managing communications. I tried to stay out of the way and not die. "Contact," James whispered into the squad channel. "Scouts, 300 meters, moving perpendicular to our position." I couldn't see anything. My Vorian eyes are optimized for low light and can detect thermal variations most species miss. I saw nothing but ruins and shadows. Mara tilted her head slightly, like she was listening to something only she could hear. "Betsy says they're nervous. Something's got them spooked." "Your rifle has opinions on Krell psychology now?" I muttered. She grinned without looking at me. "Betsy's very perceptive. The wind shifted 5 seconds ago, came from behind them, which means they caught our scent but can't pinpoint the source. They're confused. Give them 30 seconds, they'll adjust trajectory. To investigate." I counted to 30. At 28 seconds, the Krell scouts, which I still couldn't see, changed direction. Exactly as Mara predicted. "How did you—" "Shh," Mara whispered. "Betsy's concentrating." We let the scouts pass. 3 of them, each the size of a human vehicle, moving with that horrible fluid grace that made Krell so effective in combat. Their carapaces reflected the dim light in oil-slick patterns. Sensory tendrils tasted the air constantly. Each one could probably kill our entire team in under a minute if alerted. They passed within 50 meters of our position and never knew we existed. "Neat trick," I admitted grudgingly after they'd moved out of range. "That wasn't a trick," James said quietly. "That was experience. Mara's been playing this game for 8 months. She knows how they think, how they move, and before you ask, yes, she really does talk to her rifle. No, we don't know why it works. Yes, Command has tried to study her methods. No, they can't replicate her success with other snipers. She's just different." Different seemed like a dangerous understatement. We reached the observation point 2 hours later, a rocky outcropping that gave us line of sight to the valley below, where the Krell were definitely doing something ambitious and terrible. I could see them now, thousands upon thousands of warrior forms moving in patterns that suggested intelligence and coordination. In the center of the mass, slightly elevated, 4 larger forms directed the swarm. Command nodes, the brains of the operation. 4 targets, James confirmed, feeding data back to tactical command. Heavily guarded. Estimated warrior form count exceeds 12,000. Orbital strike authorized in T-minus 40 minutes. 40 minutes for us to stay hidden and not get torn apart. Then the Navy would glass the entire valley, kill everything below, and hopefully slow the Krell advance long enough for the evacuation to complete. Mara settled into position, adjusting Betsy's scope with practiced ease. She didn't set up a bipod or stabilizing equipment, just laid down, rifle cradled against her shoulder, and started breathing in slow, measured cycles. "Wind's tricky," she murmured, "coming from multiple directions. Temperature gradients all wrong. This is going to be complicated." "You have 40 minutes to maintain position," I reminded her. "You don't need to shoot anything. We observe and withdraw before the strike." Mara's finger traced the trigger guard, not touching it, just acknowledging its presence. "Betsy wants to shoot. Your rifle doesn't want anything. It's a mechanical object." "She's very insistent today," Mara continued, completely ignoring my objective reality. "Says the center node is weak. See him? Third from the left, slightly behind the others. He's compensating for something. Injury, maybe, or inexperience." James adjusted his scope. "She's right. That one's movements are slightly delayed compared to the others. Could be coordinating from a weaker position in the network." "It doesn't matter," I insisted. "We're not authorized to engage. The orbital strike will give them 40 minutes to disperse," Mara said softly. "They're smart, Observer Kell. They know we have satellites watching. They're already planning their scatter pattern. Look at the warrior forms on the eastern perimeter. See how they're positioned? That's not defensive deployment. That's preparation for rapid dispersal." I looked where she indicated. She was correct. The Krell weren't massing for an assault. They were staging for evacuation. They'd learned. Again. "If they scatter before the strike, they'll hit the evacuation routes from multiple vectors," James said, voice tight. "Command won't be able to respond fast enough. 15,000 civilians are going to die while we watch." Silence stretched between us. Below, the Krell continued their terrible preparations. "I can take the shot," Mara whispered. "Range is extreme. Wind's a nightmare. But Betsy says she can make it. If I kill the command node, the others will fight for dominance. The swarm will turn inward for at least 10 minutes while they sort out hierarchy. Enough time to call in the strike before they can scatter." "One shot?" I couldn't keep the skepticism out of my voice. "At this range? Through these conditions? At a target surrounded by thousands of warrior forms that will tear us apart the moment they locate your position?" "One shot," Mara confirmed. Her voice had gone distant, like she was already somewhere else, calculating angles and wind speeds and 1,000 variables I couldn't perceive. "Betsy's sure." "Your rifle is sure," I repeated flatly. "Observer Kell," James said quietly, "I've watched Mara make impossible shots for 8 months. Every single time, she talks to that rifle like it's her best friend. Every single time, she makes the shot. I don't understand it. Command doesn't understand it. But it works. So when she says Betsy's sure, then I shoot," Mara finished. She was already adjusting her position, making microscopic changes to her stance. The rifle settled into the pocket of her shoulder like it belonged there, like they were two parts of a single organism. "This is inadvisable," I stated, because someone needed to be the voice of reason. "Noted," Mara said. "Command will not authorize this action. Don't plan to ask. If you miss, we die. Good thing Betsy doesn't miss." She exhaled slowly, and I watched her entire body relax into something that looked almost like meditation. "Wind's dropping. Temperature stabilizing. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until what?" until everything's perfect. Her finger moved to the trigger, gentle, patient. Until Betsy tells me to shoot. I wanted to argue more. I wanted to pull rank, despite not technically having rank over human forces. I wanted to do anything except crouch behind a rock and watch this insane human trust her life and potentially thousands of others to a conversation with her rifle. But I didn't, because somewhere in my professional observer's mind, I realized I was watching something impossible, something that transcended standard military doctrine and basic physics, something uniquely, terrifyingly human. Mara breathed. The rifle waited. The Krell continued their swarm below, unaware that their fate was balanced on the edge of one woman's confidence and what might have been either genius or complete madness. 2 minutes, Mara whispered. James had stopped reporting to command. He just watched Mara, complete faith written across his human features. I counted heartbeats. Mine were racing. Mara's, somehow, had slowed to a crawl. 1 minute. The wind changed. I felt it against my sensory ridges. A subtle shift in pressure and temperature. 30 seconds. Betsy says, get ready. The rifle was a rifle. It couldn't say anything. But I found myself holding my breath anyway. 10 seconds. Everything went still. The world narrowed to this moment, this impossible shot, this insane human, and her beloved weapon. Now, Mara breathed. Betsy spoke. The sound was everything and nothing. A crack that split reality, echoed off the valley walls, and announced to 12,000 Krell warriors that someone had just done something monumentally stupid. For exactly 2 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the third command node from the left, the one Mara had called weak, exploded. Not metaphorically, actually exploded. Its head disintegrated in a spray of biological matter that painted the 3 remaining command nodes in what I can only describe as extremely surprised chunks of their former colleague. The swarm froze. 12,000 warrior forms stopped moving simultaneously, like someone had pressed pause on the universe's worst nature documentary. Shot confirmed, James said into his calm, voice steady despite the absolute chaos we'd just initiated. Command node terminated, requesting immediate orbital strike authorization. Betsy says we should move, Mara announced cheerfully, already breaking down her position. They're going to be very angry in approximately 8 seconds. 8 seconds? I grabbed my equipment. How does your rifle? The swarm unfroze. All at once, all 12,000 warrior forms turned toward our position with the kind of unified purpose that makes prey animals remember why evolution invented fear. Run, James suggested. Run right now. We ran. Behind us, the valley erupted in screeching that registered somewhere between enraged hornets and metal being tortured to death. The Krell didn't just want us dead. They wanted us atomized, scattered across multiple dimensions, and then killed again for good measure. They're fighting, Mara panted as we scrambled down the rocky slope. The remaining command nodes. Betsy was right. They're tearing each other apart, trying to establish dominance. I risked a glance backward. She was correct. Through the mass of warrior forms surging toward us, I could see the 3 remaining command nodes turning on each other, their guards clashing in brutal hierarchy disputes. The swarm was fracturing, splitting into 3 competing factions. Orbital strike inbound, James reported. Impact in 6 minutes. We need to be 3 kilometers clear of the valley floor, or we're going to learn what being vaporized feels like. I've always wondered, Mara said, which was possibly the most disturbing thing she'd said all day, and that was impressive given her earlier conversations with her rifle. We weren't going to make it. Simple mathematics. The Krell were faster than humans, and humans were faster than Vorians. Even with the swarm fighting itself, enough warrior forms had broken off pursuit to ensure we'd be caught within 4 minutes. 2 minutes short of safety. The story of this entire war, really. "Leave me," I gasped. My respiratory system wasn't designed for extended running. "I'm slowing you down." "Betsy says no," Mara replied, grabbing my equipment harness and practically dragging me forward. For someone who looked like she taught kindergarten, she had alarming upper body strength. "Your rifle doesn't make command decisions." "Sure she does. She's very opinionated about survival." The lead Krell warrior was gaining. I could hear its breathing, if breathing was the right word. More like hydraulic systems mixed with rage. 50 meters behind. 40. 30. James spun, fired a burst from his rifle, and managed to slow it down by approximately nothing. "We've got a problem." "I noticed," Mara said. 20 meters. I could smell it now. Copper and rot, and something acidic that made my sensory ridges burn. This was how I died. Dragged down by an alien monster, while a human argued with her rifle about tactical decisions. "Betsy has an idea," Mara announced. "Of course she does," I wheezed. Mara stopped running. Just stopped, mid-stride, and turned to face the oncoming Krell warrior. James and I stumbled to a halt, momentum and confusion warring for dominance. "What are you doing?" James shouted. Mara raised Betsy, sighted down the scope at the charging Krell, and fired. Single shot. The bullet hit the warrior form square in its center mass, penetrated approximately nothing important, and made it even angrier. "That didn't work," I observed, preparing for death. "Wait for it," Mara said. The Krell warrior took 2 more steps. Then its left leg collapsed. Not because of the bullet, because of the terrain. Mara had shot the ground beneath it, collapsing a weak point in the rocky slope that sent the warrior tumbling sideways into 3 of its companions. They went down in a tangle of limbs and screeching that bought us precious seconds. "Betsy says there are 17 more weak points between here and the extraction zone," Mara said, already running again. "She's very good at geology." "Your rifle is not good at geology because it's a rifle," I gasped, but I was running too, so my protest lacked conviction. The next 4 minutes were educational. Mara would stop, shoot seemingly random points in the terrain, and Krell warriors would stumble, fall, or get temporarily trapped in sudden sinkholes. James provided covering fire. I tried not to die. It was very efficient teamwork, assuming you ignored the part where one team member was taking tactical advice from an inanimate object. We crossed the 3-kilometer threshold with 40 seconds to spare. The orbital strike lit up the valley like someone had decided the sun needed a younger, angrier sibling. The shockwave knocked us flat. Heat washed over our position, turning the air into something that tasted like burning regret. When the light faded, the valley was gone. Just gone. Replaced by a smoking crater that glowed with residual energy. Somewhere in that crater were 12,000 Krell warrior forms and 3 command nodes that never got to finish their hierarchy dispute. "Betsy's satisfied," Mara announced, checking her rifle for damage from the shockwave. "Good shooting, girl. You did great." I laid on my back, staring at the sky, contemplating every life choice that had led me to this moment. "You're completely insane." "Little bit," Mara agreed cheerfully, "but we're alive and they're not, so I'm calling that a tactical victory." "Command wants a full debrief," James said, checking his communication equipment. They're very interested in how we managed to eliminate a command node from that range in those conditions. Tell them Betsy helped, Mara said. I'm not telling them that. Why not? It's true. James looked at me, desperate for support. I had none to give. I was too busy recalculating everything I thought I knew about human military capabilities and where exactly the line between genius and madness lived. Turned out that line was imaginary, at least where humans were concerned. The extraction shuttle arrived 12 minutes later. Command had questions, many questions, the kind of questions that came with medical evaluations and psychological assessments, and long conversations about proper chain-of-command protocols. Mara answered every question with patience and detail. Yes, she'd taken the shot without authorization. Yes, she understood the risk. Yes, she'd do it again because Betsy told her it was the right call. No, she couldn't explain how she knew the shot would work. Betsy just knew things. The medical staff couldn't find anything wrong with her. Physically or mentally, Mara Flynn was a perfectly healthy human operating well within normal parameters for her species. The fact that she had extended conversations with her rifle was noted as eccentricity within acceptable ranges for human behavior. I filed my report. Tactical observer findings. Human subject exhibits unconventional methodology, but achieves consistent results. Recommendation for continued field deployment with monitoring. What I didn't put in the report was my theory. Humans, I'd learned, were pattern recognition machines wrapped in meat and anxiety. They saw connections where other species saw noise. They made intuitive leaps that looked like magic, but were really just their brains processing millions of variables faster than conscious thought could track. Mara didn't really talk to her rifle. She talked to herself, using Betsy as a focus point for calculations she couldn't consciously articulate. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, terrain, enemy behavior, probability cascades. Her brain processed all of it and expressed the conclusions as if her rifle was telling her what to do. It was brilliant. It was insane. It was the most human thing I'd ever witnessed. Over the next 3 months, Mara Flynn eliminated 17 more Krell command nodes, each shot more impossible than the last. Each time, she consulted with Betsy first. Each time, she made the shot. The Krell adapted, but they couldn't adapt fast enough. Every time they lost a command node, their swarms fractured. Every fracture bought time for evacuations, regrouping, counterattacks. One human with a rifle she talked to, like a beloved pet, was systematically dismantling their entire command structure. The final shot came at the Battle of Threshold Station. The Krell had committed everything to one massive assault. Every command node, every warrior form they could scrape together. Intelligence estimated 37 command nodes, directing an army of over 200,000 Krell. High Command's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Defend long enough for civilians to evacuate, then detonate the station's fusion core and take the Krell assault force with it. Acceptable losses. Strategic necessity. Mara Flynn had a different plan. Betsy says we can win, she told the defense coordinator. Sergeant, we have 37 command nodes, the coordinator replied, showing admirable patience. You've never engaged more than 4 targets in a single operation. Betsy's feeling ambitious. The coordinator looked at me. I'd been assigned as permanent liaison to Mara's unit after the Valley incident. Apparently, watching humans do impossible things was now my full-time job. Observer Krell, your assessment? I thought about 8 months of watching Mara Flynn defy tactical logic and basic physics. I thought about the 43 confirmed kills that had become 60. I thought about a rifle named Betsy that might not be able to talk, but certainly had opinions. Let her shoot, I said. They gave us a firing position on Threshold Station's upper observation deck. Clear line of sight to the approaching Krell fleet. James set up his equipment. Mara settled into position with Betsy cradled against her shoulder. "This is different," Mara murmured. "Not shooting warriors. Shooting ships." "Can Betsy make those calculations?" I asked, because apparently I'd accepted this insanity as normal. "She's thinking about it." Mara adjusted her scope. "The lead ship, the big one in the center, that's the primary command vessel. Kill it, and the nodes inside will fight for dominance. The fleet will pause for coordination. Give us maybe 3 minutes." 3 minutes to do what? Mara smiled. 3 minutes for our fleet to jump in behind them while they're confused. Tactical Command has ships waiting in subspace. They just need an opening. "Command authorized this?" James asked. "Not exactly," Mara admitted, "but Betsy's very persuasive. I sent them the plan 20 minutes ago. They'll either jump in or they won't. Either way, I'm taking the shot." The Krell command ship was massive. Organic technology blended with weapon systems that could crack planets. It was surrounded by smaller vessels, protected by layers of point defense that could track and destroy incoming missiles from light years away. Mara was going to shoot it with a rifle. "Range is absurd," James noted, feeding targeting data. "We're talking about hitting a moving target through vacuum across distance that requires calculating stellar drift." "Betsy loves a challenge," Mara said. She breathed, slow and steady. Her finger rested on the trigger like they were old friends catching up. The rifle, an object of metal and chemistry and human engineering, waited. "Wind doesn't matter in space," Mara said softly. "But gravity wells do. Stellar radiation. Magnetic fields. So many variables, Betsy. You sure about this?" The rifle was sure. I could tell by the way Mara's breathing changed, by the subtle shift in her posture, by the expression that crossed her face, half concentration and half something that looked almost like love. "Okay, sweetheart," Mara whispered. "Let's end a war." She fired. The bullet traveled through vacuum, across distance that should have made accuracy impossible, through gravitational fields and radiation and every physical law that said this couldn't work. It hit the Krell command ship's primary neural cluster. We know this because the ship stopped moving. Just stopped, mid-approach, like someone had cut its strings. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then the Krell fleet turned on itself. 37 command nodes, all fighting for dominance, their ships firing on each other in a frenzy of hierarchy disputes. Our fleet jumped in behind them, caught them in the confusion. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, the Krell assault force was destroyed. The war wasn't over, not completely, but this was the breaking point. The moment when the tide turned. All because of one human, one impossible shot, and a rifle she loved like family. After the battle, they wanted to study Betsy. Figure out what made her special. Mara refused. Said Betsy wasn't a research subject, she was a partner. They tried to order her to comply. She just stared at them until they backed down. Humans are territorial about the things they love. My rotation as observer ended 3 weeks later. I filed my final report. Recommended Mara Flynn for every commendation they could legally give a human. Recommended that other species stop trying to understand human tactical methodology and just accept that sometimes genius looks like insanity. The last time I saw Mara, she was cleaning Betsy on the observation deck, humming one of her incomprehensible human songs. The rifle gleamed in her hands, well-maintained and obviously cherished. "Thank you," I said, "because someone should, for saving us, for ending the war, for being impossible." Mara looked up and smiled. "Wasn't just me, Observer Kell. Betsy did most of the work. Didn't you, gorgeous?" The rifle did not respond, because it was a rifle. But somewhere in the mathematics of that impossible shot, in the calculations that turned one bullet into the end of a war, maybe there was something that looked like magic. Or maybe humans were just very good at talking to themselves and calling it intuition. Either way, they called her soft for talking to her gun. They called her crazy, unstable, a liability waiting to happen. Then she ended a war with one shot and proved that sometimes the softest voices carry the biggest guns. I returned to Voria after the war, wrote a book about human combat psychology. It sold poorly. Turns out most species don't want to read about how humans achieve the impossible by having conversations with inanimate objects. But every night, before I sleep, I think about Mara Flynn and her beloved Betsy. About the 43 kills that became 107. About a sniper who loved her rifle and changed the course of galactic history because she listened when her gun told her to shoot. Humans are insane. Beautifully, effectively, world-endingly insane. And thank the stars they're on our side.